Random crits in Team Fortress 2? Has anyone discussed this before? Okay, it's been talked about a lot. I even sorta kinda made a video about random crits before, but at this point I kinda like to pretend that nothing on this channel before 2017 exists. So, why now? We may very well be closer now than ever to having random crits removed from the game. In the March 28th update, the Blue Moon update, competitive update, whatever you want to call it, they added an endgame survey basically asking you to rate random critical hits on a scale from horrible to great. Random crits have been in this game for 10 years, and people have complained about them for 10 years. Or at the very least since I started playing in 2010. But to play devil's advocate here, does that mean they're bad? This is the internet we're talking about, where any group with any terrible opinion can be heard if they complain enough. So let's go back and see why random critical hits exist to begin with. People often bring up that random crits exist to help newer players. They give someone who just installed the game 6 minutes ago a chance to kill a seasoned veteran when otherwise they probably wouldn't. And while I guess that is possible, it isn't the main purpose of random crits, at least according to Robin Walker, one of the lead developers of TF2. It's actually there to help better players. Ahem! We created Team Fortress 2's critical hit system so that critical hit chances increase over time based on performance. There's the skill. If you're a good player, you'll always have a higher chance of hitting critical hits than novices. I'll touch on this a bit later, but in case you didn't know, your chance for random critical hits increases with the damage you've dealt over a certain time. Here's also what's said about random crits in the developer commentary.
Critical hits are one of the features that resulted from our focus on pacing. The critical hit system attempts to slightly influence the highs and lows of the game by increasing the chance of a critical hit based upon the player's recent performance. In summary, the better you're doing, the more likely you'll continue to do well. This helps create those rare high moments where a single player goes on a rampage and gets 3 or 4 kills in rapid succession.
If you ask me, and you didn't, I don't think that good players should be given additional rewards for killing people besides that you've killed people. Unless, it's part of like a weapon stat, but even then it would probably have an additional downside attached to it. Yes, the base chance for random critical hits gives XX Gibbous Boy 2009 a chance to kill pub stompers like Mr. Anime Profile Unusual Hat Soldier and his blighted beak medic girlfriend, but in reality it's probably going to give random crits to players who don't need them. There are a lot of ways that I think TF2 could better accommodate new players, but I'm not so sure that giving them a 2% chance to deal 3 times the damage is really the best way to do that. Maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, primary and secondary weapons have a base crit chance of 2%, and that can scale up to 12% based on the amount of damage you've dealt in the past 20 seconds, maxing out at 800 damage dealt. When the game first came out, the base rate was 5% with a max chance of 20%, but the required damage to get that high was 1600. So that change, way back in 2009, reduced the overall chance for random crits. At the end of the blog post explaining this, it says, as a result, if you're a highly skilled player, you're going to fire significantly more critical hits than those around you. And remember, if you've just killed 2 or 3 enemies, now is the time to push. Again, that points to random crits being more beneficial to better players, but it also points towards another reason I've often seen to explain random crits. To end stalemates. If you kill 2 or 3 people, then your chance for crits are higher. That increased chance can let you push through a choke point and win the game, or push the enemy team back. And again, yes, that can be the case, but are you really going to attempt to push relying solely on random crits? Probably not. If you absolutely need a random critical hit to break through, then your max chance of that being successful is 12%. But let's be real, the most important reason for random critical hits is that they're fun. Is what I would say if that were true. Seriously though, this is entirely subjective. If you couldn't guess by this point, I'm not really a huge fan of random critical hits. I really used to be pretty neutral on this whole thing, but over the years the novelty has worn off. Big time. Obviously nobody, well, probably nobody, actually likes getting killed by a random crit when they otherwise would have survived. But I don't even like getting random crits. I feel bad about it, especially when it ends up killing a newer player. But if that's what you like, I guess it's what you like. I can't tell you what to find fun, but I could try. Especially with the ever-looming threat of competitive, I've seen some people argue for random critical hits and that they keep casual casual. It's a random factor that keeps things more lighthearted. Without them, casual would just be too serious. But would it really? I would argue that random damage spread added a more significant random factor to casual TF2 than random critical hits do. But random damage spread was removed in 2015. Honestly, with pretty little fanfare. It was a pretty significant change to casual, or quick play back then, but nothing really changed. I mean, it did, but you know what I mean. In case you're a newer player or just didn't know about it back in the day, random damage spread affected literally every shot you fired. Every hit had a chance to deal up to 10% less damage or 10% more. So for example, a grenade has a base damage of 100, meaning it would randomly deal between 90 and 110 damage. This is why the old lock and load used to have a chance to one-shot low-health classes, and why a fully charged Machina body shot could sometimes kill pyros and demo men. I don't think I've ever seen anyone complain that random damage spread is gone, or that it should be brought back. It was something that was in the game from the start, but now it's gone. For the better, I'd say. An important part of removing random crits, if that were to happen, would be balancing. There are quite a few weapons that have the inability to random crit as a downside. But really, it's not much of a downside on primary and secondary weapons. If all weapons were to have that downside, it wouldn't suddenly make a weapon like the Man Melter overpowered. Where it is an issue is melee weapons. The base rate and the max rate for melee crits is significantly higher than ranged weapons, with a base rate of 15% and a max of 60%. Now that certainly makes melee weapons more threatening, and I've seen some people argue in favor of turning off random crits for everything except melee weapons, and I guess I'd be okay with that. But if they do want to encourage you to use your melee weapon for damage, why not make it better? Especially considering that a lot of stock melee weapons are outclassed by more utility-oriented unlocks. And manpower actually does this. Does anybody remember that? There are no random crits in manpower, and all melee weapons do 30% more damage. Which is higher than I'd say it needs to be for a regular game mode, but you could probably just increase the base damage of all stock melee weapons, with the possible exception of Spice Knife, since it doesn't get random crits anyway, by like 5. Making the standard go from 65 to 70 just to pack a little bit more of a punch. You could probably even make heavy and pyros higher, since those classes basically have no need for stock melee damage. Then just adjust the damage bonuses and penalties on unlockable weapons accordingly. The no random crit penalty on melee weapons could just be replaced with like a 10% damage penalty, making a weapon like the Eyelander go from a base damage of 70 to 63, which is a whopping 2 whole less than it is now. Then if they wanted to, they could add that kind of penalty to a weapon like the Uber Saw, which would basically keep it the same way that it is now, but it would make the Bone Saw better. The point I was getting at is that I don't think that the removal of random crits from a balance perspective would be all that complicated. I mean, they're turned off by default and competitive, and it doesn't create some massive imbalance there. And when you listen to the development team and all the effort they put into making things readable, and that the weapons are distinct, and the colors, and all the classes, and everything, they put all this time into making sure you know exactly what you're fighting. But as long as random crits are a thing, you could know all your damage values, have great situational awareness, clearly see who's around you, but there's no way that you can predict that a 5 health soldier is going to blow you away because you managed to get the right roll. And that was just a line that I directly stole from a video I made about how important the game's art style is to the gameplay. There's always some kind of counterplay in TF2. A certain class, a certain weapon, a different path, different team composition, better communication. But random crits can make none of that matter. And maybe that's why some people like them. But even casually, I'd rather rely on the skill of myself or my teammates in order to win. Not some kind of dice roll. This isn't an RPG. This ain't your Pokemon. Even in Pokemon, it's only 1.5 damage, at least since Gen 6, and even then there's ways to block and manipulate crits, like Focus Energy, Scope Lens, Shell Armor, Battle Armor. I guess in TF2 there's like Battalion's Backup and Vaccinator. Wait, why am I making this kind of comparison? Random factors like bullet spread have some kind of purpose on single-shot weapons like pistols and revolvers, and you could argue about that if you want. But at the end of the day, random factors like random crits and even random spread on shotguns are pretty much unnecessary. Maybe they're fun. I certainly don't think they ruin the game. But if they never existed, would people be arguing that they should add random chances to crit? Probably not. And I wanted to bring this up at some point, but there's also that bug with miniguns and flamethrowers where it'll look like, at least in your view, that you're getting random crits, but you're not actually getting random crits. So that might lead you to being aggressive when you probably shouldn't be, because you're not actually getting random crits. Maybe a bug shouldn't be a determining factor in whether or not random crits stay, but at least having no random crits fixes that. It's something. This would be my genuine prediction for what would happen if random crits were ever to be turned off in casual. People would make a big deal out of it at first. I'm sure a lot of people would be happy. Reddit will probably run some meme about it into the ground, and then a little while later, some people will say that they actually did kind of like them, and that they miss them. And then that's kind of it. You'll still have your teams with 4 snipers and congas and friendly heavies who heal the enemy team and whatever. It's still Team Fortress 2, it's just that you don't have random crits. But perhaps most importantly, it would finally put an end to those always hilarious random crit keybinds. Oh man, random crits are fair and balanced, guys. It's a real knee slapper. Random crits are a little burst of skill. That's original. Did you just come up with that? Random crits are part of a balanced breakfast. Stop it. You're killing me.